Listen, if you've stopped operating your South Carolina LLC, locked the doors, turned off the lights, and thought you could just walk away, you are stepping into a massive legal trap. Seriously. There's this super dangerous misconception out there that simply ceasing your business operations formally closes your company. I'm here to tell you it doesn't. Until you actually file the right paperwork, your business is still legally alive, and you are still very much on the hook.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the stakes of just ghosting your LLC are incredibly severe. When you just stop operating without going through the formal dissolution process, your company enters this sort of zombie state. You can rack up totally unexpected fees, ongoing tax liabilities, and most dangerously, personal exposure to lawsuits and creditors long after you thought you had walked away. We're going to ensure that doesn't happen to you.
In this explainer, we're going to cover 6 key areas. First, an intro to dissolution. Then, your pre-dissolution checklist. Third, the step-by-step process. Next, your post-dissolution responsibilities. Fifth, overcoming common challenges. And finally, resources and a quick disclaimer.
Section 1. Intro to LLC Dissolution. What it actually means to close up shop in SC.
So, the phrase closing up shop isn't actually a legal term. Whether you're doing this because you're retiring, maybe running into financial concerns, or just doing a major business pivot, under the South Carolina Uniform Limited Liability Company Act, specifically Title 33, Chapter 44, dissolution is the formal legal process. It is literally the only way to officially end your entity's existence. The absolutely critical thing to understand right out of the gate is that until the state accepts your final documents, you remain subject to all statutory requirements, tax filings, and legal obligations. No exceptions.
Now, you should know there are 3 types of dissolution. First, there's administrative, where the state actually forces your business closed for noncompliance, like failing to pay your taxes or failing to maintain a registered agent. Not great. Then there's judicial, which is a court-ordered closure, usually due to, say, member deadlocks. And finally, there's voluntary dissolution, where the members actively choose to close things down. This explainer is focused entirely on executing a voluntary dissolution, so you can control the narrative and avoid a total administrative disaster.
Section 2. Your pre-dissolution checklist. Audit your business before you file.
Before you file a single piece of paper with the state, you need to audit your business. Actually, you know what? The failure point in most South Carolina LLC dissolutions isn't the paperwork itself. It's the overlooked obligations that suddenly pop up later. So you must do a full audit. That means pulling out and reviewing your operating agreement, digging into any active contracts and leases to figure out how to terminate them, settling up any outstanding vendor invoices, and double-checking your tax standing with the South Carolina Department of Revenue. You want to start this process with a completely clean slate.
And here is exactly why reviewing your operating agreement is step number 1. South Carolina has a very specific and honestly pretty strict default rule. If your operating agreement doesn't say anything about how to close the business, state law defaults to requiring the unanimous consent of all members to voluntarily dissolve. Everyone has to agree. This is way stricter than a lot of other states that might just require a simple majority. If you don't secure the right votes according to your agreement or state law, disgruntled members can totally challenge the dissolution later on.
Section 3. Step-by-step dissolution process. The 5 critical phases of closure.
Okay, now that you've audited the business and secured that all-important vote, here is the chronological order of closure. It's 5 sequential steps to properly terminating your LLC. Step 1, the formal member vote we just talked about. Step 2, winding up your business affairs. And to be clear, this means doing absolutely no new business, just liquidating assets and paying off debts. Step 3, notifying creditors. Step 4, filing the Articles of Termination, which is Form F045, and Step 5, closing your tax accounts. I have to warn you right now, skipping even one of these steps, or trying to do them out of order, creates lasting financial consequences.
Let's zero in on Step 3 for a second. Notifying creditors. This number right here is vital. 120. Under South Carolina law, you must send written notice to known creditors, giving them a hard deadline of at least 120 days from when they receive it to submit their claims. But what about unknown creditors, right? Well, for them, you're actually required to publish a notice in a newspaper of general circulation in the county of your LLC's principal office. Doing this newspaper publication is huge because it starts a 5-year bar on claims from anyone who didn't get a direct written notice.
Moving right along to Step 4, filing the actual paperwork. You might be wondering, how much does it cost to formally end your LLC's legal existence with the Secretary of State? Just $10. That's it.
You file Form F0045, the Articles of Termination, with the Division of Business Filings. You can do this online, you can do it by mail, and standard processing is incredibly fast, usually taking just 2 business days. Guys, it is a $10 fee to prevent thousands in potential future liabilities. Just get it done.
Section 4, Post-Dissolution Responsibilities. Ending your tax and employer obligations.
So this is the phase where so many founders just totally drop the ball and make their biggest, most expensive mistakes. Why? Because filing with the Secretary of State does not end your tax obligations. You have to proactively close your accounts across multiple different agencies. This includes the South Carolina Department of Revenue for things like your sales tax and withholding. If you had employees, you absolutely must deal with the Department of Employment and Workforce. You also need to cancel any local, county, or municipal business licenses so they don't just automatically renew on you. And finally, you have to go all the way up to the federal level and deactivate your EIN with the IRS.
So how do you actually handle these closures? Well, for the Department of Revenue, it's pretty easy. You can submit closure requests right through their MyDORAY online portal, or if you prefer, use paper form C-278. For the Department of Employment, you're going to use the Suits portal or form UCE 101S. And for the IRS, well, they don't technically cancel an EIN, but they will close your business account if you mail them a formal cancellation letter detailing the closure along with your final federal tax returns.
Section 5, Overcoming Common Dissolution Challenges. Avoiding the biggest traps. Let's tackle a frequently asked question that is honestly the biggest myth in this entire process. Does dissolving my LLC automatically close my tax accounts? The answer is absolutely not. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how distinctly separate these two things are. Filing your termination with the Secretary of State only ends your legal entity's existence. That's it. It has zero effect on your tax accounts. The state doesn't just magically cross-reference your termination filing with the Department of Revenue. These are two completely separate actions, dealing with two totally separate agencies.
And here is exactly why that is so incredibly tricky in South Carolina. Unlike a lot of other states out there, South Carolina does not require you to get a pre-filing tax clearance certificate before they'll accept your articles of termination. So, the Secretary of State, they will happily process your $10 form, even if you still owe taxes. But if you think you're done and you just leave those tax accounts open, you will absolutely face ongoing tax assessments, penalty letters, accruing interest, and eventually personal liability. Always, always file your final tax returns and make sure they are clearly marked as final.
Section 6, Resources and Final Disclaimer. Where to go next?
You now have the roadmap, so let's make sure you have the exact tools to start navigating. When you're ready to execute this, your primary digital destinations are going to be the Secretary of State Business Entities online system to file that F0045. You'll also need the MyDearWay portal at door.sc.gov to close out your state tax accounts. The South Carolina Business One-Stop website, that's a fantastic resource for navigating your license closures. And of course, if your LLC has significant assets, complex debts, or maybe some member disputes, leaning on business attorneys or CPAs is highly, highly recommended.
Which naturally brings us to our professional disclaimer. This explainer is for informational purposes only and should not substitute for professional legal or tax advice. Every single business situation is unique, and consulting with a qualified professional is always the best way to ensure total compliance with state and federal laws.
So the crucial point is this: dissolving an LLC isn't just about turning off the lights. It's about systematically closing doors behind you so that liabilities literally can't follow you out. Take a hard look at your business right now. Is your operating agreement actually ready for a vote? Do you know exactly who your creditors are? You now have the exact blueprint to dissolve your South Carolina LLC the right way. Start your audit today, file the paperwork, and close this chapter with total confidence.